Started. All right, let's do this. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to week number 3 of the Civil War class. We were supposed to do an in-class competition, but I got a call from a worldwide leader that I can't mention. He said, start with the chronology. When I have to deal with the budget of a country, we sometimes think, well, we'll go around and do some icebreakers. And he's like, every time that we get right to numbers, progress is made. Start with that. And so I thought, okay, that's what I'm doing. So
tell Vlad I said hi.
Yeah. So also of note, who here has seen Sleepless in Seattle and You've Got Mail?
I've seen Sleepless in Seattle
Years ago.
It's the exact
before
same
I knew
movie.
better.
I've seen them both.
It's the exact same movie.
Is it? 'Cause
Not
I
only
really hated You've Got Mail
Really?
and Sleepless in
You
Seattle.
hated
I
too?
thought it was okay.
Huh.
Meg Ryan is enchanting, amazing, very underrated.
Isn't that Meg Ryan and Tom?
Both
Hanks in
times.
Both of them?
Yeah,
Both times.
and Meg Ryan, like, she became my favorite actress after those 2 movies. I didn't know anything about her. I knew she was like a 90s actress and stuff. She's unbelievable. I totally get why like people in the 90s were like, if she's in it, I'm going to go pay top billing. Very, very good. Very cheesy. Both are cheesy movies, totally.
Yeah.
But like but it's like if you go to the circus, right? And like this guy's gonna walk on a tight wire. Whatever, like you're expecting that. It's like I'm going in, I know it's gonna be cheesy. And she crushes in both films.
Did you see the one where she hooks up with that French actor?
Ah, yeah, the French Kiss, Kevin Kline.
Now that's a really good movie.
That's the next. I'm gonna go through all of the Meg Ryan filmography.
Wait, Kevin Kline's in it?
He plays the French guy, the French art thief or something like that.
She also played Jim Morrison's
Is it?
girlfriend
Is it?
in
How old?
Doors by
How old is she in that movie?
same zone.
Like young Meg Ryan.
But
Freaking legit.
she wasn't good in that one
No,
because
impossible.
she was
She
still cutie pie, kind of reserved versus
That's her
Jim
thing, though.
Morrison.
she also played Einstein's niece in a movie called IQ.
Oh, yeah, that's really cute.
Really,
Yeah.
And she married a
Thank you.
mechanic.
This is
That's
cool.
so-
I don't.
But good cheesy.
I don't know these movies. I have to watch these now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think I've seen that.
Walter Matthau plays
Played
Einstein.
Einstein, right.
Yeah, go see that, or rent that one.
The first time in Hollywood history that a non-Jewish person has played a Jewish character.
We're
The
making
inverse being quite common.
we're making a lot of history today. It's fun. Okay, so welcome. Walter Matthau, thoughts?
Walter Matthau was not Jewish.
Oh, he might be.
I think he is.
No, but Meg Ryan, I don't think is.
Oh.
So
gosh.
his niece, by virtue of him being Jewish.
Someone's got a call.
Hey.
Hello, hello, let's go. This class just got cool right now. It wasn't, but now it is.
Meg Ryan could.
Sorry, everyone here. Sorry, guys, sorry.
You missed our entire conversation on Meg Ryan.
Oh.
I'm
Which
speaking of
shows how
cool.
quickly we're moving through the period.
Hey, guys, have you ever seen Sleepless in Seattle and You Got Mail with both?
She's trying to get me to watch both of
Yes.
them.
It's really good.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're going to
if
at
you
some
just
point.
do it like
Yeah.
immediately, do it tonight. If you're like, oh, it's cheesy, like it's supposed to be cheesy.
Yeah.
If you get over that, Meg Ryan just kills the entire time. She's freaking awesome. I said, like, I thought Meg Ryan, if you said Meg Ryan, like, oh, 90s actress, whatever, like Jennifer Aniston, blah, blah, blah. Meg Ryan is awesome. No, she plays like so, like she plays ditzy in a very, very like enchanting way. Like it's awesome. Like
It's not so cute when she gets old, though. Don't watch any of her movies after.
that's why people get mad at me. I'm like, I only want to watch Meg Ryan.
I-
How dare you? Like young Meg Ryan. Like how dare you say it?
I have a friend that looks like me.
You?
Yeah.
Lucky you. Very good.
I thought she was cute.
Oh, it's nice to be friends with good-looking people. Like last comment about this.
Why aren't we better friends than Rock?
There's a lot of mysteries in life. A lot of comments. Okay, I honestly think the best looking male lead guy is Brad Pitt. Like there was pictures of Brad Pitt, young Brad Pitt. He crushes. Like, why did they not make a movie Brad Pitt and Meg Ryan walking down the street? Like that would be the whole film. Brad Pitt. Here's the great. Wait, here's I'm gonna pitch this. We take a time machine back to 1990. Meg Ryan and Brad Pitt, like height of equal male, masculine, feminine gorgeousness, and the whole movie is Brad Pitt and Meg Ryan, they don't have to even use fake names, just their names, like reality TV. Go in and out of stores on Fifth Avenue and wear different clothes, and we watch them for 2 hours. Like, I'm down with that. All right, let's get started. Anyone, okay, if anyone knows this answer, then, because Dave, today's a serious class. Today's a very serious class. Trust me, people are talking, and they said it's gonna be serious today. Who knows Brad Pitt's first big role? You know what he was in? Like, when he
That
like,
was Thelma and Louise.
Thelma and Louise, when he's the guy, the cowboy guy, he's the hair dryer in his pants.
Yeah.
right.
That was a breakthrough.
More good-looking people, Gina Davis, Susan Sarandon, classically beautiful. Okay, let's get, yeah, Gina Davis was in,
Yeah,
Thelma and
Ron Asher was in it, but come on, she's not.
really? You don't like her? I like her a lot.
She irritates me.
Haters gonna hate, I
Look
guess.
of her actually
No.
irritates me.
That's probably a strength for an actor. Like, hey, when you get on stage, people hate you. Like, they're gonna wanna like, you evoke emotion, you're not boring, right? Don't be lukewarm. All right, we are getting started with the war today, yes. And we are getting underway, and I have for you 11 points. Oh, from Crittenden Compromise to 11 to equals 11, and then 11, June 1861. The title of today's lecture, for everyone listening later on the live stream, we'll post live stream when it's posted on YouTube. December 1860, secession through the first summer of the war, 1861. Allow me again, and mark my word, the next 50 minutes are 0 rabbit holes, all business. Allow me once more to frame the chronology for you. It's very, very important, right? The American Civil War is from 1861 to 1865. And knowing that, I think, is very, very helpful because it then pieces together all of the different moving parts of the 19th century, if you so choose, kind of long 19th century. And if you want to get very, very specific, the war is from April, the first half of April in both 61 to 65. April 12th, 1861, we'll talk about today, the firing on Fort Sumter, which is the classic opening of the war. And Appomattox Day, when Lee surrenders to Grant, Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia, April 9th, 1865, which, for all you history buff nerd people, happens to be Palm Sunday. Lincoln actually is assassinated on the 14th on Good Friday. Yeah, we'll talk about that later in the class. But anyways, those are your dates, 61 to 65. Today we start with December 1860 through this first summer of the war. First thing, Crittenden Compromise. All right. We ended last class with the class before that, because last class was just, we read Ayer's book, talked about the discussion. We ended last class with John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry in 1859. So when we talk about the Crittenden Compromise, this is a Kentucky senator. We have a situation of frayed nerves, angst at an all-time high in the soon-to-be dissolved and broken up United States of America. The 1850s, especially from the Compromise of 1850 through even things like pop culture, Harriet Beecher Stowe and Uncle Tom's Cabin, the Dred Scott decision, especially Bleeding Kansas, of which Brown plays a part as well, blah, blah, blah. This is all old news for everyone. You've heard this before. Crittenden says, okay, I see there's very, very strong sentiments in the country pro and against slavery, and I want to avoid the war at whatever cost. So my compromise is to harden the Compromise of 1850 in perpetuity. He's putting forward this like legislation, this suggestion. How about we say forever, look, the North and South will agree to disagree on slavery. There'll be slave states and free states. And all the things that 1850 talked about, including the banning of the slave trade in DC, but the allowance of the Fugitive Slave Act that really increases passions on both sides. How about we say that is eternal? And how do you think people react? I think you already know the answer. They're just like, this is worse. Like, no, like we hate the people who own slaves because they're so evil and bad. This is terrible. The other side is like, no, we hate the tyrants trying to tell us what to do and the federal power. It makes them even more angry. I have 2 comments on the chat. Let me address that. We've already knocked out number 1. You can erase number 1 and crush it into the dust beneath your boots and laugh at it as it dissipates into nothingness. 1 is gone. Crittenden Compromise gone. The last ditch effort to save America before war breaks out. Okay. Hello, Barb. Dave Schmidt writes. Hi, Dave. Hi, everyone. Barb, hello to you. And Dave, hello. Well, Dave, whatever.
I was
Dave.
thinking for Bart.
Oh, yeah, I know. That's why. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's why I responded with such disrespect. My feelings were hurt that you say hi to her, but not to me. All you have for me is criticism. And it's a hi to her. Okay, I see how it is. All right. So Buchanan and permissiveness. Who is Buchanan?
The only unmarried president in US history.
He's president, yes, unmarried president, yes, from where? This sounds awesome. This is good.
From the South.
He's not from the South, but he has strong Southern sympathies in some ways. He's from a very northern state.
Vermont.
No, think more to the South, but not the South.
Oh, yeah.
Also no.
Massachusetts.
Wow, just keep the wrong answers coming, guys. Pennsylvania, he's from Pennsylvania.
Ah.
And Buchanan, now, guys, okay, pick your favorite and your least favorite president. Keep that person in your mind right now. Keep it to yourself, right? Please keep it private. I couldn't care less at all. I don't care about the most things you think, especially this. Really couldn't care. So save your breath. But think in your mind, who do you think is the best and the worst president? You have your reasons why. A lot of historians say Buchanan is the worst president of all time. Is this a fair assessment? I would say no. I would say it's not. Because think about this. This might be the first really kind of like amazingly important thing I'll tell you today. Becca Schmidt is ready to write, as always. Well done. Seriously, Becca, I'm envious of your note-taking ability. It's impressive. And I know it sounds like I'm being sarcastic. I'm dead serious. And you look like you have beautiful penmanship. Excellent. Here's the real first important thing I want to tell you guys. Both Buchanan and the person who follows him, who is Lincoln, right? They both unfairly are elevated and diminished by their circumstances. Does everyone understand that?
Yes.
If nothing happens, most likely Buchanan and Lincoln are equally forgettable. They're two old white dudes from the 19th century, that kind of like modern, dismissive, whatever, who cares, right? Tell me something about Polk or President Tyler. What? They were presidents, right? They probably wouldn't matter. Now, there's a great historical debate. Is it great men and great women who make history or circumstances? And I often tend to fall on the side of individual agency, actually, that there are great men and women. Like if Napoleon Bonaparte is not around in France during the revolution, that's a different story. Okay, there's different people, and by great men and women, they might be super evil people, but that really influence history. However, I think it would be foolish to say circumstances don't play a role. And here's where you see a perfect example. Buchanan and Lincoln might be both similar kind of guys, just kind of forgettable, normal kind of public servants. But because Buchanan is the guy who allows the South to secede and the Civil War happens on his watch, he's so evil and bad and awful. And because Lincoln is the guy who saves the Union, right? However complicated that is, he's the greatest president ever. You understand? Do not discount how important circumstances are, right? You see this most simply in someone like George Washington. You might be like, well, he was a great man, a great general, whatever. But he's the first. That always matters, right? I don't think that Sir Edmund Hillary is probably the greatest mountaineer in the history of alpine climbing. He was the first, along with Tenzing Norgay, the Sherpa, to summit Everest. So those two guys will always be at the top of the list because they did it first. Everyone knows this, but it's hiding in plain sight often. We forget that, how important circumstances are. Buchanan wants to end the issues in Kansas, bleeding Kansas, by admitting Kansas as a slave state under the Lecompton Constitution. Do you remember what I told you last class when people voted on this in Kansas? What was the number? They rejected, by the way. They say absolutely not to Buchanan. They want to be a free state, and Kansas will join as a free state. Well, what's the margin of rejection against Buchanan?
11,001.
You're a genius. Like, I love correct answers. They make me happy. That's perfect. It's the exact. That's not even. If you're like 10,000 to 2, like that's great. Thanks for that's the exact number. 11,000 to 1,000. It's a crushing defeat. And so all Buchanan can say is like, well, yeah, I kind of like the Crittenden thing, guys. Is everyone cool with that? And he's seen as this kind of waffling, milquetoast kind of character who just wants to kind of hang out and chill. He plays too much video games. He's always on Netflix. He actually was such a scumbag. He's the president of the United States. They had a Netflix code. He uses his family's Netflix login info. He doesn't want anything to do with politics. People think he's just kind of like paralyzed in action. Okay. So Buchanan, worst president ever. Fair? No. Why? 1, circumstances. 2, he does kind of not act. He's like, And in fact, before Abraham Lincoln is inaugurated, which, historical note, inauguration day back then was in March, not January. So by the time that Lincoln is elected, November, same election time, first Tuesday of November, but it's a longer period of the president-elect. Lincoln is not president-elect from November to January, but to March. In that time period, already 7 states will secede from the Union. So Buchanan is forever remembered as the president who did nothing, was kind of like, I don't know, guys, can we all get along? Let's be nice. Everyone's like, we hate you. And he's like, all right, I'll just chill in the Oval Office then, I guess, and wait this out. I'll just like wait till the next guy comes in. a lot of that kind of going. That's why he has such a bad kind of reputation. I don't think it's deserved. I'm not some kind of Buchanan apologist. If you're like, is that because I work for the deep state in Pennsylvania? I'm from Pennsylvania, which I am, and I do as well, that I have to defend him? Maybe, but that's not here or there. I'm just saying he's not deserved that reputation. Point number 3, Lincoln elected president, November 6th, 1860. Here's something very, very, very interesting about Lincoln being elected president. What does it mean if I were to say that Lincoln has a mandate or does not have a mandate? Emmanuel Macron has a mandate to govern in France. Biden has a mandate. Trump had a mandate. We hear that all the time. What does that mean in politics? This person has a clear mandate to govern.
An overwhelming majority was the traditional.
Like an order, almost like divine or from the will of the people.
Yeah, and actually, I like the terms you're using because in the rulers of China, the mandate of heaven. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, it means like in democratic terms. Go ahead. No?
It's like so obvious in your face that to say otherwise is just.
Yeah, it'd be like if I ran for the governor of Idaho, I'd probably win like 92% of the popular vote. That would be a mandate. I would appeal to all people and then be like, whatever you want to do, if you want to make yourself a king, go ahead. That would be a mandate.
Yeah.
That's why I won't run. It's not fair. It's not fair to other people.
Yeah,
Like,
like it's-
Especially since you're not a resident.
That's why I'm so beloved. I'm an outsider. I'm not part of the Idaho,
There's that.
the Boise Swamp. Yeah. First thing I do, if I'm like the governor of Idaho, move the capital to Sandpoint, Idaho, and
Yes.
Pocatello, but both dual monarchy.
Okay.
Pocatello. No, I'll have the triangle monarchy, Sandpoint, Pocatello, and Orofino.
You have your winter capital and your summer.
Yeah, exactly. I told you, I'd be the worst leader. I'd want to create I'd want to be very, very clean and good, but create the impression I have all these scandals, which is bad.
So Pocatello would be Budapest and that standpoint would be Vienna.
Maybe, I don't know. Let's work out the details. Lincoln does not have a mandate, my friends. This is problematic. I'm not here to criticize Abraham Lincoln or lionize him, I swear. I'll say again for the last time, you should not care what I think. Actually, I mean that. I hope that you come to these classes and you love it. You're like, in all sincerity, like, oh, he presents all this cool information I didn't know. I'm learning a lot. My opinion doesn't matter. I'll never pull some kind of crap like, oh, I have a PhD in history. Who cares? Like that, who cares? Like you interpret the facts. We're all equal in terms of like, you tell me how you feel about these people. That's what matters to me. That's why I hope you'll do the kind of assignments at the end, because I want to hear what you think. So if I tell you Lincoln's my favorite president or I hate him, that doesn't matter. It's just important to stay on the facts and realize Lincoln does not sweep into office in this massive popular support. In fact, in a 4-man race, he wins 180 to 72 electoral votes, and he only wins 38% of the popular vote. Now, to be fair, that's more than Stephen Douglas, his rival, Democratic nominee. One Democrats nominate 2 people. Maybe that's the problem. The Democrats nominate Stephen Douglas and Hillary Clinton. And she gets that's when people know our campaign started at this time. She got involved in all these things. 38 to 20. I'll talk about the real candidates in a second, guys. Come on, seriously. This isn't funny. This is serious. 38% of the popular vote. So look, let's be fair to Lincoln, okay? That's great. He won the popular vote. He won the. Is he legitimately elected? 100%. 9 check marks. The way I went to public school my whole life. The way our public school will present it is like basically, without being sarcastic and serious, you would think Lincoln won like 62%. It's a massive victory. Like Ronald Reagan in 1984 against Walter Mondale, I think won 525 to 13 electoral votes. He came in with a strong.
Minnesota was the only state that won against.
Right. That's a political mandate. And I think even with that, like 525 to 13, the popular vote, I don't know if he even won 60%, maybe like 58. That's how Lincoln is often presented. It's not that much. Basically, a little over a third of the country, 2/5 of the country, almost 40% vote for Lincoln.
Wait, so the country, I'm sorry, I know this is a stupid question, but the states that seceded are no longer voting.
They are voting.
They are voting.
They haven't seceded yet.
Oh, they-
My
Oh,
friends,
they
this is
seceded.
not only is that not a stupid question. No, that's a brilliant question because chronology matters. We're staying in this chronological frame today, but I'm kind of playing around back and forth. I said Buchanan, when he leaves office in March, 7 have seceded. The first state does not secede until December 20th. So that's what, 6 weeks after
They
election.
secede because Lincoln.
In many ways, yeah.
Got it.
So no one has seceded. That is literally the opposite. If it was opposite day, I'd be like, well played. That's the opposite of a stupid question. Because that matters. Who's actually voting here? Everyone is voting right here.
Okay.
The fourth,
In the second election of Lincoln, is that true, that the rebel states, quote unquote, the Confederacy doesn't like? there's
I
no-
don't, yeah, no, the second, as far as I understand, the second vote, no, the South is not in the Confederate States. It's the second election takes place in 1864. In fact, what solidifies that for him is the victory in Atlanta. Atlanta falls on September 2nd, 1864, which of course, we're gonna cover this class. You're gonna have these timelines falling out of your head, like in a good way. Like it's gonna be just emblazoned into your brain, I promise. So you will not have to, I'll say Atlanta, you'll say September 2nd, 1864. But no, the South is, but at this time, let's focus here for a second. Like you guys were saying, right, no one is seceded yet. America is still all the US of what it was at that time. Here are the four candidates, okay? It was, let's see where it is here. Where do I have it? It was Lincoln, Douglas, Breckinridge, and this guy Bell, who's completely irrelevant. John Bell, who cares? His name could have been Alexander Graham Bell. It's just whatever. At least he would have had a telephone like to his resume. This guy Bell gets like three votes total.
Develop that.
Maybe that, yeah. But basically, the main Breckinridge, the Democratic nominee of the South, the Southern Democrats, Breckinridge gets all the South except for Tennessee. Please note that. Okay, 38-29 in the popular vote is Lincoln versus the Northern Democratic candidate, his former playmate during the Lincoln-Douglas debate, Stephen Douglas, two dudes from Illinois. So Breckinridge is like crushed overall, but the South at this time is already signaling our homogeneity as a bloc, right? We'll vote for this. The only state that doesn't vote for him is Breckinridge. Tennessee will become a Confederate state. It does secede, but they're a border state too. Tennessee, North Carolina, of course, Virginia most famously. Okay. I'm not the Hillary joke was pretty good. That was a good response. Thanks, guys. I came up with that. Most of my jokes are kind of on the fly. Thanks for the laughs.
So Tennessee went for Douglas, I'm assuming, not Lincoln, right?
Yes, right. Yeah, Lincoln gets no support in the South at all. Let me make the second most important point in this class. I always say, let's see, there's one thing. Talked about one thing earlier, circumstantial versus great man, great woman. Here's the second really important thing. Lincoln does not do a good enough job explaining to the South, I'm not an abolitionist fanatic. That's how people, Sophia, hello. That's how people interpret him. That's how they read him. Lincoln is just, he's William Lloyd Garrison. All he cares about is, equality, ending slavery, etc. Lincoln has a very mixed record on this. Lincoln was pro-equality. He also thought slavery would last until 1958. It's not a misnomer. Actually, he thought for 100 years. People say if Lincoln actually would have gone south and be like, guys, calm down. Like, in fact, in his first inaugural, if I'm not mistaken, we'll read excerpts from next class. He even says, I have no desire to end slavery, which is scandalous to his most lionizing supporters. We're like, this guy from the beginning was all about equality. No, not really. If the most contentious debate today is abortion, you're like a politician who the pro-life movement thinks is like all pro-life, being like, I'm not going to overturn Roe versus Wade. In fact, I support it. That's what Lincoln said vis-a-vis slavery. Now, you guys think I'm all against slavery? I don't. It's not really a big issue. In fact, I want it. That's why I say this a million times. It's too bad the Twitter historians, it's either if you're on the left, all that matters is slavery. If you're on the right, slavery has nothing to do with it. Slavery was the most important issue. It's the prime cause of the war, but it's not the only cause. And in fact, there's a great argument that if the North would have crushed right from the beginning, if McClellan wasn't bad at being a general, another guy, super good looking, just wanted to get in the papers. I don't blame him. Wanted to date Meg Ryan. Should have won more battles. He has letters where he's like, Meg will like when I do this. And the guys are like, no, move the army here. He's like, no. He's like, Meg told me to do this. I'm trying to win her affections. I don't blame him at all. He did it for Meg Ryan. But the war drags on. And so Lincoln has to eventually issue the Emancipation Proclamation to his credit. But it comes in the middle. It's very, very convoluted. I hope, amidst all the kind of fun we're having, that as we set the stage for this, we're going to get into some serious controversial stuff. What I mean, not in the way that's usually used. I mean, like, serious things are like, oh, there was these 5 things around this issue. I never realized that. I was just thought it was one thing. Oh, wow, that's interesting. We're gonna go hard diplomat in this class and be like, well, what would you have done if you're this general, this leader, when there's these blah, 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 blah here, right? Like, I'll give you a perfect example to talk about today, when Lincoln suspends habeas corpus. Well, that means he's a tyrant, no trial without, he can be in prison without a trial. He has a tyrant. Well, is it a tyrant if the country's falling apart? Maybe he had to do it. Drastic times call for drastic measures. These are the arguments we'll get into like hard with. Okay. Okay, Lincoln. Lincoln's biggest problem right, is that on the coattails of Buchanan, he doesn't try to pacify the South. We could say enough. And when he comes into the office, please note he is not an abolitionist. The South perceives him as that. And what is our cliche? What is our favorite cliche?
Perception.
Yeah,
is reality.
Exactly. It is indeed.
Mhm.
Perception is reality. And so on this number 4, December 20th / Christmas Eve, 1860, the reason I have the double dates, December 20th is when South Carolina will formally secede from the Union. On the 24th, they'll issue their ordinance of secession, which we'll read from next class. And we'll talk about why they did it or their arguments. Now, really quickly, South Carolina secession plus reasons. Let me move the board up a little bit. So the Astons and all of our people online can see better. Let me see. I'm sorry, y'all, if it doesn't, it's kind of still glared out a little bit. Well, all right. Well, then you have to trust me. You have to take my word for it. If you can't read it yourself, you have to let me read it to you, which I'm very happy to do. It's like we're doing story time together. South Carolina secession and reasons. South Carolina, their biggest reasons for seceding are this kind of like high-level philosophical stuff. We are the heirs of Thomas Jefferson, of Washington, as our forefathers seceded against the tyrant King George III. That is Abraham Lincoln. They don't mention slavery really at all. They're very much the philosophical. That's the one main reason why the South seceded. States' rights, that kind of argument. The Constitution guarantees that every state is its own country, and they don't really mention the slave question really at all, despite being a very pro-slavery state. Mississippi, the second state to secede, their declaration literally says the only reason we're seceding is because of slavery. We want to preserve this economic system. We don't even care about the philosophical, whatever, brainiac stuff. We just want slavery. So right away, you see this again in this kind of like argument against all the people online that, oh, it's only slavery. It's not slavery at all. It was both. There's a lot of different issues. And how does it compare against the whole North? Well, the whole North basically just thinks kind of the common sense argument. If you're a Northerner, we just can't, you don't get married to get divorced. You don't start a country to break it up. Yeah, that wasn't really our country. We're part of the British Empire or whatever. The colonies, America, that's a special thing. We can't just destroy this dream in the cradle. That was the kind of Northern argument. If I asked any person off the street in Moscow, what did the Union not like about the South seceding? They'd probably be like, because they're going to break up the country. That's fair enough. That really is not a bad answer. All right. The delegates meet in December of 1860, and there's a lot of people there called fire eaters. Who are these people? They're not circus performers. Earl, you say that is a lot better. That's excellent. Good. Well, you move a little bit closer then. There we go. All right. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. That's good to hear. Really, that makes me very happy. I'm not a huge fan of this new board, to be honest with you. The old board was less glary, and I like that better. Who are fire eaters? They're not circus performers, like the guys who swallow the swords. What is a fire eater?
Like a hawk.
Okay, what do you mean like a hawk?
Someone who wants war.
Yeah, good, right? War hawk, war dove. These guys are hawks. Yeah, literally, exactly, right? Eat fire, eat missiles, eat artillery. Like they want to fight. A lot of the fire eaters too are kind of very talented Southern orators. Rhett, Williams Lowndes Yancey, William Lowndes Yancey. I always tongue tie him. Rhett, Bob Toombs from Georgia. These names mean nothing. Seriously, what I'm saying is like this is not like I do want you to know who Abraham Lincoln, Jefferson Davis were, and Robert E. Lee and McClellan, these kind of people. But like these, just for the full information, there are Southerners who are like, yeah, like let's go. And let's do this. Like from the time of nullification already, our own states here are individual countries. The best example I can think of is like what's going on with the more nationalistic arguments in Europe. I've used the example of Orban multiple times. Orban does not think that Ursula von der Leyen is the head of Hungary. He doesn't. He's like, we're part of the EU. We like the kind of connections, but I'm the president of Hungary, not her. And the very super integrationist people like Macron are like, yeah, like Brussels should rule all of Europe. It's a very similar debate, actually. But I think a civil war break out in Europe? Absolutely not. I really would be terribly shocked. But it's like the similar kind of things, like people in the EU who are very, very nationalistic, like the Southerners, like just where the large kind of like, one nation sea to sea people are like the Northerners. Ursula von der Leyen, the Lincoln of today. Freaking cool name. I'm not gonna lie. Ursula von der Leyen, baller name. Right? Am I serious? Like, imagine if you're like, oh, it's my friend Ursula. I'm like, that's a really nice name. What's your name? Like Lion something. I don't know. Like, that's great. That's really cool. All right. It's nice to say nice things about people, I think. Okay. So All right, so the South Carolina Convention actually meets in Columbia, South Carolina, home of the USC Gamecocks. South Carolina Gamecocks, SEC school, always underperforming football. They always go like 5-7 every year. Not very good. They meet in Columbia on December 11th, 1860. So 1 month plus 5 days after Lincoln's elected. Pretty soon they're going to have to move to Charleston, the beautiful classic city on the sea, the port city. They have to move to Charleston because of a smallpox outbreak. So pandemics are, a world history accompaniment thing. It's not just not just now. 3 things happen at this convention. Ready for it? Very, very simple. Number 3, I already told you. Number 3 was we moved to Charleston. Number 1 is they convened. Wow. Gracjan, what did you guys achieve in class today? We convened. We got together. Yeah, but what did you do? Well, I'm trying to tell you we were there. Cool. I don't know how that's an accomplishment. They claim it as an accomplishment. I guess with travel back then showing up actually, travel, noontime drinking, all those kind of things, they showed up. They're there. So convene, the big thing though, number 1 is convene, number 3 is move because of smallpox from Columbia, center of the state, Charleston. Number 2 is to approve the ordinance of secession. So really the most duh thing happens here. Wait a second. You're saying they convene in a secession convention and agree to secede? And that's it? Yeah. And in fact, guess what the vote is? It was very, very close. The delegates that are assembled there to vote, like, should we secede from the union or not? Guess what the vote total was? We've been doing a lot of mathematics today. 38-29 on the popular vote, right? What was the electoral college? 180-72 for Lincoln. What is the vote total of South Carolina secession in favor of? Ready for it? 169 to nothing. So it was not close at all. It's being sarcastic. Everyone go, and what they do basically is they approve this immediately. They're all super pumped. The best example I can give is this idea of like Augusta Leibniz, love of August, Great War. All of my Great War people from last semester. By the way, you will always have a special place in my heart. I always think of the Battle of the Frontiers, those brave August days of 1914. Think of you. When people came out on the trains, right? I mean, Sophia, you know what it's about. You were there. You're part of that. Exactly. They came out, right? All these people in August 1914, like, war is going to be great. It's going to be awesome, with no idea about trenches and all the things we covered, all the horrors of the First World War. No one was imagining the mud of Passchendaele in 1914. Same thing here. No one is thinking about what war is going to be about. I'm going to give you a very good example of that next class, I believe. We talk about First Manassas or the Battle of First Bull Run, depending on how you want to call it. I'll explain that in a second. Next class. But these guys, basically, I'm not trying to be funny. I love joking, as you know. This is actually serious. They are like, we're all here together. Let's have a frat party. Like, let's get mad drunk, have tons of fireworks, dancing, music in the streets, approve it, and let's get to party. They come with that kind of jubilatory spirit, right? They have already decided. Now, all of you know this already, right? Maybe here's what you would say to me. And I would say in response to you, excellent, exactly right. You have to be like, look, this has been boiling in America for a long time. The 1850s, all the kind of antebellum stuff. When Lincoln's elected, perception is reality. We know he's an abolitionist. Oh, he's actually not. We know he's an abolitionist. They've already made up their mind. They show up, they know what they're going to do. So they come there already saying, like, look, we made it this far. Charleston is a beautiful city. Let's have like a Mardi Gras celebration. It really is. Even the Bishop of Charleston, a man named Patrick Lynch, who was like mad Confederate. Patrick Lynch was so Confederate, Jefferson Davis appoints him as a special envoy to the Vatican. There's bishops who have to add limina visits every 2 years to check in with the Pope. Davis before that, and Lincoln, both respected leaders. And now maybe it's a good time too for like, who is Jefferson Davis? He is the Confederate president. He will be. Both Davis and Lincoln are like, hey, if there's bishops there, if you're the Bishop of Boise, if Bishop Peter is in Rome, Lincoln might be like, hey, would you mind stopping in and talking to like Cardinal Antonelli, who was Secretary of State then. I think Cardinal Parolin now is Pope Francis' Secretary of State. Would you mind in just talking to him, telling us about our cause, what's going on? You know, when you report in the Diocese of Boise, you talk about the ecclesiastical stuff, also talk about how the war effort's going. Lynch was so psycho pro-Confederate. Davis is like, I don't want you to go as a bishop. I want you to go like Confederate. I want you to go for the Confederacy. He was like, yeah, totally. He's like, I'm all in. And we'll talk a lot about him in the international dimensions of the war. If you don't know a lot about the war itself, Gettysburg and Vicksburg, all these important battles, you probably know less about the international thing, what Pope Pius IX thought about the war. We're going to talk a lot about that. That's later on. That's my teaser trailer for you to be like, please keep coming to my class, please.
And read his book. I'll plug it.
Freaking read my book. It's probably the best book ever, at least in my opinion. I mean, is that wrong?
I didn't read every book, but I read it.
So good, such a good book, seriously.
Okay, can I come back to this? I'm gonna be the master of. the
Actually, no,
obvious
you cannot.
question today.
But
So this is just South Carolina secession.
yes, ma'am.
The 169,
Only South Carolina is the only state that secedes in 1860. The
okay,
next 10 are all in the following year, correct?
so the 169 represents whoever their state reps would have been at that point.
All the people called to the convention, right? All the whatever, I don't even know actually technically who is like invited. If it's like members of Congress or like local mayors, whoever, just all 169 men who represent South Carolina gather in first Columbia, then Charleston. And they're like, we're the convention determined. We rule South Carolina. We're the representatives. I think it was a kind of big smorgasbord, you know.
So
kind of
it
people.
wasn't necessarily their state house.
I would assume, I don't know. I have one thing I want to promise you, almost like in a sacred is too strong of a word, but in that kind of like, I will never, if I can avoid giving you false information, I never want to. I don't know. It's very possible it was simply the state legislature, right? The way the people in Boise today would pass something, it might have been proper. Remind me if you don't forget to email me to provide that information for you, because I'm not sure if it's just state legislature proper, or if it's like local mayors too, and different people. Maybe we have 30 people from Columbia and Charleston, because that's where we are. Maybe the Piedmont, there's a guy there, but he can't make it. I'm not exactly sure of the exact makeup of the people there, but it's people who are claiming to speak for South Carolina and who are going to usher in what they believe to be. Please don't misunderstand this. They believe we're doing 1776 again. Like, this is the birth of a new country. This is the Republic of South Carolina. They are not like the Confederacy was that. None of these guys are like, oh, let's break away from Lincoln and have a new Lincoln rule us. The guys are just pure states' rights. South Carolina, only for South Carolina. Let's party.
Where does it follow up? You may get to this.
It's not too early to party. Let's get it started. Let's go.
Wait, you may get to this, but then, so are we to understand that each of the states that secedes has a similar type
Yes,
convention?
precisely, until we get to February 4th to the 9th of 1861.
Okay.
You'll have to wait maybe 7 minutes in real time, maybe,
Mhm.
to hear what that is. But that's when the game changes. Please note as well, make a note in your mind, November 6th hyphen December 20th, little backslash, then hyphen to April 12th. Because the first part of this time frame today, look, is Lincoln's election / South Carolina seceding. The first shots are not fired until number 8, Fort Sumter, South Carolina, April 12th. So in that time, there's a lot of like, what are we doing? What's going on? And that's, I mean, you're in the right place. If you're like, what's going on? Like, we're going to talk about what's going on. Oh yeah, we're going to go after it very, very aggressively about what is going on exactly. So indeed, number 5, in addition to South Carolina, that's what inad.sc means. In addition to South Carolina, 6 more states secede between January 9th and February 1st, 1861. They are in order, and the numbers are on the bottom, the dates. All of them are January, the one for Texas, of course, right? Everyone understands how calendars work. It's February. January 9th, Mississippi, the 10th, Florida, 11th, Alabama, the 19th, Georgia, 26th, Louisiana. By the end of January, well, let's throw in Texas. By February 1st, 1861, it is no longer South Carolina. There are now 7 independent states that have broken away from the United States of America. Our guy, James Netflix password Buchanan, is still chilling in the White House. He's still there. Lincoln is not being inaugurated for another month, right? This is again the unfair slander might be too hard too, because but the unfair kind of like characterization of him as the worst president ever. Well, arguing against myself, maybe here's kind of like, what is he doing? Right? Is he cool with that? If you're president of the US, you just say like, yeah, you guys can break away. I don't care. I mean, I'm only your leader. I don't care what you do. Okay. So by February 1st, 7 states have left the Union. Next class,
Independent countries.
yes,
But
just
they
left
have not come together in any way yet.
until number 6, February 4th, 9th. There's a convention, okay, a state convention in Montgomery, Alabama, where a lot of these representatives become kind of drawn together from these 7 states. And here's what they decide: to elect Jefferson Davis as provisional president of what they're now calling the Confederacy, the Confederate States of America. That term is very, very apropos, and apropos the truth, apropos the reality of it. It's very accurate. Because remember, what's the great centralizing power thing in American history? The Constitution. What did it replace? It was very loosely bound. The Articles of Confederation. There's this idea of like, that was better. Even if we signed on to the Constitution, we liked the Articles of Confederation of 1781 because they really, really were super pro. If you think the Constitution is pro states' rights, read the Articles of Confederation. So there's this idea here, a confederacy of binding together. We're really trying to say, hey, check the words. We're coming together now. It's no longer every man for himself. It's us seven, and we're gonna have a titular head over us, Davis, but it's very loose. To all you critics on Twitter, this is not a new United States of America. It's more loosely bound. Jefferson Davis was born less than a year apart from Lincoln in the same state of beautiful bluegrass music and Kentucky Wildcats football. He was. He was a senator from Mississippi. He was a Secretary of War in the Pierce administration, a colonel of the 1st Mississippi Rifles in the Mexican-American War. He was served and worked at West Point like a lot of these guys. Davis, like Lincoln, kind of is, what's the political word I'm looking for? Davis is a lot like Lincoln. They're both Kentuckians, and then there is something about that, like similar kind of like frontiers, kind of self-taught, kind of rough around the edges, maybe in a good way, like, you know, of the people, not some like New York elitist. But Davis and Davis, the Confederate president, and Lincoln are both kind of classified as what? By what M term?
Moderate.
Yeah, they're both seen as kind of moderates. They're both moderate guys. Davis is not a freaking fire eater. Wow. It's like Lincoln would say something, I'm not an abolitionist. Abolitionists are the fire eaters in the North. No matter what, end slavery, even if the whole country blows up, end slavery. Fire eaters, no matter what, tear apart the whole country for states' rights, even if everything blows up. None of those guys are extremists, and they would say the same things themselves. Davis gives an inaugural address when he literally says, Confederates are the American revolutionaries of 1776. He's not playing around. He literally says, Confederates are, and he actually goes like this to the crowd, like that, and they're just like screaming 76, like, you heard the people. He's like, he didn't really do that.
Like Freddie Mercury.
Yeah. And then he plays Somebody to Love by Freddie Mercury. Amazing. On the piano. Davis crushed this. Yeah, you should have, I can't even describe it. It's the best part of the speech when he played Somebody to Love by Queen. He says that the independence is inflexible. We're going to be inflexible of our pursuit of independence, but our goal is peace. Becca Schmidt, if you and the Yankees come and fight us, it's because you want the war. We're going to fight a defensive war. That's what he says. He's like, we're not out to fight a war. We just want to be left alone. And then he says the moon landing was fake. So he gets canceled for that for a couple of days. They bring him back. I would love to see a serious politician have some fun once in their lives. Please. Seriously, I love, like, not like make a like Trump or Biden or Obama, whoever, right? When they have a gaffe, you know what I mean? When they have a gaffe and it's funny. I'm not talking about that. I'm not a president come just like troll people with their face. Be funny, like come on.
Look into Ben Carson and the Pyramids.
Ben Carson, the Pyramids. Okay, I've never heard of this. Good. I love new stuff to pursue. Great. Ben Carson and the Pyramids.
Yeah,
Okay.
how we talked about how the pyramids were the granaries of St. Joseph.
But that's
Or
true,
was
right?
it from-
Well, I mean,
I
like,
think so.
well, I see. I don't know about that, but Joseph, when he goes to the many-colored coat, he goes to Egypt, he becomes the
Yeah.
granary like
That's
prime
right.
minister. Yes,
Like
that's
the granaries
that's
here.
yeah, but that's too close to reality. I'm talking about. I wish a president would be like, yeah. By the way, the Earth, there's this ice wall around the world, and Antarctica is like this new dimension. I would do something like that, and just like walk off.
Right.
Just deal with
But
it.
secular historians would look at that as being the equivalent of that.
Yeah, I guess. Well, whatever.
Oh, Sarah Palin saying she could.
No, that's
see
not,
the
she,
crown
no,
from the
she didn't.
house.
That's only SNL that said that. What she said is when Putin rears his head, something like Alaska's in that area. Which is true. Alaska is only 2 miles at the closest point from Russia. It is true.
A lot of truth being spilled here. Yeah.
No, that is-
When
Serving on the
President Trump said we're at war. And no one believes
As
it.
a joke.
No.
Yeah, but since we're okay.
Or when Biden says President Harris.
Yeah, but see, okay, but time out. Look, I told you, I am not, you guys know me. You know that I'm like an irreconstructible, I'm a woke monarchist. I'm like a super left-wing monarchist. I'm trying to please everyone here. I'm both leftist and right.
And Pol Pot was also super left wing.
But wait, getting back on topic, do not lose your train of thought, I promise. I'm not gonna tell you how I feel about politics in class. I mean that, I'm serious. I'm not gonna tell you if I want you to think I'm left wing, right wing, or whatever. And I will, the only thing I'll cop to admit is I'm a Catholic, I'm a practicing Catholic, that informs my political views. I'm not talking about that though, like
5%.
Biden with President Harris and stuff, that's a gaffe, right? Imagine if Biden thinks, God bless Biden, like, and I mean that like on the human level. Let's say he is struggling with like whatever cognitive stuff. He's an older man, God bless him. If he thinks like, oh, like if Harris actually runs the, let's say that, right? And that's not funny. That's like a gaffe. I mean, like a president actually coming out and saying, like, by the way, UFOs are real. I'm a UFO. And like pulling off a mask and it being his own face, he was wearing a mask of himself, just to like piss people off. See, thanks to you guys, we're getting off topic. I was on a great roll with all this stuff, got these kind of conspiracy theories. It's all Trish Smith's fault. Yeah, go ahead.
Well,
Again.
President Trump said, get injected. And he didn't really mean
But see, but again, but it's too serious. I respect what you're saying, but that's still like, that's debatably like, maybe he supports the vaccine or not. I don't like, I'm saying like something totally ridiculous.
Like
Like-
we all have to wear hats.
Like saying something stupid like Gracjan and Kraszewski can be wrong about something. Everyone laughs like, he's always right. It would be so ridiculous. All right, so Lincoln inaugurated on March 4th, 1861. I'm going to read this to you next class, my friends. I love this class. If you haven't noticed, the class, the period, Augie's classes, but the Civil War class, it's so well put together, I promise. And I say that not as a point of like self-reflectory pride, but we're talking about the facts today. Next class, we're going to read these documents. I'm actually going to read to you from the inaugural, and I'll prove to you what I'm telling you now. That Lincoln comes out super, super moderate. He says he has no power or right to interfere with slavery. The Constitution does not allow me to abolish slavery, even if I wanted to, and guess what? I don't even want to, basically. He comes off very moderate, but historians will say this is what he should have done like in November. When he was elected, he should have said these things on like a train trip in the South and told people, you know, look, chill out. I'm not going to like, you know, I'm not here to mess with you guys. There might have been a different reaction. A lot of people say there wouldn't be a different reaction. People were already so sold on the idea that, you know, Lincoln's this kind of psycho guy, or maybe they're looking for a pretext. If I'm like Robert Rhett, one of these guys in the South, these fire eater guys, I'm like, I don't care who the president is. I don't care if his name is Dixie, his first and last name Dixie. Like, I want to secede. We're going to secede no matter what. So I don't know. Like, I actually am a Civil War historian. What is my professional opinion on this? I don't know. I don't know if it would have changed. People do say that though. And maybe if Lincoln would have talked with some of this moderation that he shows in his first inaugural, it would have prevented the war. Because Buchanan, God bless him, does nothing. He says that it says and does nothing the whole time.
But based on everything prior to this class, it seems that the attitude was right for secession, regardless of the slavery.
That is the argument. And that's why too, again, like South Carolina, when they secede, unlike Mississippi, say nothing about slavery. So they don't even care. They're like, we just want to be our independent country. We want to be the new, when the American revolutionaries seceded from Great Britain, slavery wasn't an issue because it was legal everywhere. They just wanted to secede. They're like, that's just what we want to do. We don't really care. Like, we just want to break away from the big bad King Lincoln. So you're absolutely right. But what I mean is like Lincoln doesn't make any effort to even like explain himself. Like a candidate like, oh, people are, when I run for governor, people are talking bad about me. I don't even give the Idaho Statesman an interview. Like when I just sit down and talk to them, like charm them, disarm them, you know, like, no, I'm not even talking to those people.
So what about the Dixie banks? I just learned about it, and the Dixie money, where the British were also paying that to the South.
Yeah.
And then they didn't no longer wanted to give silver. That's why they had the Dixie banks and Dixie.
Yeah, so this is very, very interesting. It's a fantastic point. A lot of the money wars go back to Andrew Jackson, the Bank of the United States, that kind of thing. And one of the things, the greenback triumph, the triumph of centralized banking, we're not at 1913 Federal Reserve yet, but out of the Civil War, what emerges is this detestation from Washington of kind of like wildcat banks. And that's easy to counterfeit currency and kind of loose banks. Of course, the South, is going to set up its own banking system. Confederate money, because of inflation at the end of the war, is going to be insane. It's like the Reichsmark in like 1922, like a million of the currency for a loaf of bread. And the whole time, Britain and France, why is there a lot of sympathy for the Confederacy in Europe? Because they want to break apart the US. They want to break apart this burden. So of course, they're dealing with money, and there's this Erlanger loan, these great banking families in Europe giving money to the Confederates. That's a huge, huge part of it as well. Philip Paladin, I think, Paludan, if you want a good book, wrote like a banking history of the Civil War. And there's a lot of stuff with money. You seem like you're gonna say something, and I really want to hear what it is.
I'm trying to, P-A-U-L what?
Paludan, Paladin.
Okay.
Philip Paladin wrote a book. I apologize for not having the name of the book. I will try at some point to post to our Vandal site a book reading list, the Civil War. It will overwhelm you. But I mean, it's like only pick fun stuff you want. So I'll probably put 100 books on there. Like here's, and I'll probably put them thematically. Like if you want a book on like women in the war, slavery, politics, economics, like the suffering in the war. We read one of those books by Drew Gilpin Faust, just about the idea of suffering in the war and stuff like that. So I'll have all those kind of listed off beyond the 7 that we have in this class. Fort Sumter, war begins, April 12th, 1861. Let's go. What happens? Well, Major Robert Anderson from Kentucky as well. What's these freaking Kentuckians? You know, why is everything about it's about Kentucky in this war? He's kind of sympathetic to the South, but he's one of these dudes who's like, I'm going to stay in the Union. He, in fact, teaches artillery, I think I told you, to Pierre Beauregard, who is the Southern general going to be inflating the fort. Anderson teaches artillery to Beauregard, not only at West Point. Not only do these guys share battlefield and share strategy and actual war experience in the Mexican-American War, they were all like BFF at West Point. The most famous Confederate guy, Robert E. Lee, was the president of West Point in the 1850s. I mean, you can't get more on the nose than that. Like he was the head of the U.S. Military Academy. We'll talk about Lee in a second as well. We'll talk about Lee a lot in this class, obviously, one of the most important figures of the war. But so very ironically, Anderson teaches Beauregard, this kid, how I don't know the age difference between them. Imagine like 5-10 years, whatever. And they become friends, and he likes Beauregard so much that he's like, I want him to be my TA. He's such a good student. I want to keep him on, teach artillery to the new cadets and stuff like that. Beauregard uses the lessons Anderson taught him at West Point in this kind of classroom to actually defeat him on the battlefield. Very, very interesting. Davis tells Beauregard, this is around April 8th, 9th, 10th, they're in talks. He tells them by April 12th. Davis tells Beauregard by April 12th, reduce the fort, bomb the fort. What is the fort? Well, South Carolina is no longer part of the USA. Lincoln is like, au contraire, this secession is a joke. You guys are a joke. The South is like, we're not a joke. We're an independent country. So Fort Sumter becomes this contested thing in Charleston Harbor of like, is it part of the Republic of South Carolina, this invented country, or this real country, depending upon your sympathies? And Lincoln says, we're not going to leave South Carolina. If we leave Fort Sumter, we're tacitly admitting we quit. Lincoln also, you know what the coolest thing about Lincoln is? If you're like, oh, you know, it's good Lincoln came around, issued the Emancipation Proclamation, and I agree, thank God, slavery was ended, that's great. That's not his most skilled thing though. Lincoln with the Emancipation Proclamation, as you'll learn in this class, does it because he's angry that the South is kicking the North's butt. In 1862, and he's like, let's just do this because this will maybe cause insurrections in the South. It's more of a kind of like a geopolitical kind of like Machiavellian move. It's not the great equality thing he's made out to be. He is a diplomatic genius though. What does Lincoln say vis-a-vis Europe, keeping the troops at Fort Sumter? What does he say? Remember, the European theater is going to be important in this class because it's important in this war. What does Lincoln say about Fort Sumter? Because he could have pulled Anderson out, just leave with the freaking psycho Confederate, fire your guys, take it, F them, we'll deal with them later. He could have done that. He doesn't say that. He's like, I want you guys to hold your ground. Why?
We never retreat. We never.
No, excellent. Is that kind of, that's a great answer in terms of like, there's that macho kind of like, yeah, we stay, fight to the last man, maybe battle of Alamo, like romance, totally. That's big secondary though. What's the prime reason why?
Does it have anything to do with defense against piracy and other?
No,
places?
no, don't think about that.
So it doesn't look bad.
Also, no. No, saving face, all politicians want to save face. These are all good answers. Piracy is important, but no, there's one reason vis-a-vis Europe. Pretty soon, envoys from the USA and the CSA are going to go with their porridge bowl out to the European great leaders in Europe, help us. How does Lincoln staying at Fort Sumter help his cause?
To protect trade from
No,
Europe to the
No,
US?
no. Man, it feels good to tell you guys no. I'm totally riding this power trip now. I'm just gonna keep.
You might win.
No, I love this. Keep the wrong answers coming. You guys are presenting answers up the hill like this. I'm just like,
Well,
It makes the Southerners like rebels as opposed to like him being an invader.
close enough. they will always say they fired the first shot. The South's gonna go to Europe, and they do, and say, oh, the big bad North, oh, big bad wolf, they want to eat us. Wait a second, like Queen Victoria will say, who fired the first shot? It was you guys, right? All right, bye. Literally, the South will always be undercut that, oh, we're just trying to fight for peace. They're the ones that fire the first shot. Lincoln, brilliant, does this brilliant. If he just leaves, the South doesn't fire the first shot. Now the North is gonna have to eventually, if they want to put down the rebellion, come and get the South. The South will be right. They attacked us. But now he gets to say always, no, they fired on us. We wanted peace. We're just defending our fort.
Why didn't they just like take their manual on the Vatican, just like surround it and just be like, okay, the South I'm talking about. Like, we're not gonna actually attack you, okay, fine. Just, you can't go any.
They didn't have your generalship there to propose that. I don't think that was ever, no, I'm not even being sarcastic. I don't know. That was never an option. Davis basically says they get closer and closer, he gives them like an ultimatum. If they don't leave by a certain date, we're gonna fire on you guys. That's what happens. That seems like they stick to that plan. By the 13th and the 14th, the Fort Sumter's on fire. It's a smashing victory for Beauregard. I think that at one point they fire like 600 shells a minute or something, just like boom, 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 boom. Charleston Harbor's totally Lynch, the Catholic bishop, is just like sitting there like live tweeting it, like yeah, like literally live tweeting it with the old pen, like at this time. I'm serious. Like he would have been on like the whole time like this. Like he's giving a play-by-play like from his diocese, looking at this happening over the harbor. And very interesting character, Patrick Lynch.
Is it accurate? I don't think anybody was actually killed.
You're a genius. I was waiting for when does Dave Schmidt's like, Dave Schmidt has good comments. When is he gonna bring that kind of like freaking like Wittgenstein stuff to class? The kind of like crazy good answers. Yeah. The first casualty of the war, 600,000 people died in the war, God rest their souls, every one of them, is killed in a salute. So no one dies in the bombing of the fort. And Beauregard's like, listen, man, to Anderson. He's like, by the way, when this is over, you want to get beers? He's like, totally. At Joe's, he's like, yeah. Cards later, yeah. So they talk about plans afterwards. And then he says, look, before you guys surrender the fort, Beauregard speaking to Anderson, do you guys want to like do a 21 gun salute to the US flag? And Anderson's like, that would be very nice. Or Anderson asks, can we please like take the flag down? This was very much, in some ways, it's still its age of gentlemanly chivalry. Beauregard was like, hell no. You want to, if I even see that flag, we're going to send drones after you. This was like, yeah, take your time. You guys surrender, right? Okay, yeah, take as long as you want. And in this 21 gun salute, I think a man named Howe, Private Daniel Howe, Hough, is killed when his gun misfires. So the first casualty of the war is actually in the peaceful transition of Fort Sumter after the bombing was stopped. Very, very ironic, tragic, sad, and may God rest his soul, sincerely. I will cease from saying that after every time, because indeed, in this that we could say it probably every 5 seconds. It's a very bloody war. Let's just get that out now. May God rest all the people's souls who died. A lot of people died in this conflict. I use this as an example that 600,000 people die in this war compared to 41 million total casualties in the Great War that we talked about. Yes, nothing compared to that. In 4 years of fighting here, we rack up numbers like that in the first couple months in the Battle of the Frontiers in the Western Front, August of 14. Compared to that, those of you that took my World War I class, I'd be like, oh, that's not that big. But I mean, this is still the bloodiest battle in US history. And I would argue it's probably the most important thing that ever happened in American history, I think. I don't know. Again, that kind of like circumstantial prejudice. Yeah, the revolution was first. How do you say that's not more important? Okay. Okay, we're done with the class basically. We have just a couple things to talk about. I love this. We got to have a lot of humor in this class, but also we got a ton of serious good stuff done. This is fun. It's always very nice when that happens. On April 17th, Virginia 8, the 8th state to secede is out. This is when it's like, let's go. This is like, let's go level. Like we're going to have a war. Virginia is a border state. It's where, right near the Mason-Dixon line, enveloping Washington, D.C. Your questions about Alexandria and kind of like the makeup of D.C. Virginia secedes and Robert E. Lee will join them, right? And this is the famous thing, like, well, Lee was this disgusting scumbag, traitor to the North. He's off war. He was a hero patriot who just, his true land was Virginia. I'm not going to tell you how to feel about Lee. I will say it is true. It's not a defense of him, but just the facts only. He was very anguished about this. He did love America, but he did think like Virginia is my home. He was absolute states' rights guy 101. He said, I can't fight against Virginia. You know who also loved Robert E. Lee? Who?
Lincoln,
Lincoln offered Lee what?
the head of the army.
Exactly. Lincoln loves Lee so much. He's like, you want to rule everything? You want to be like the original George McClellan before we get him involved? He's chasing Meg Ryan, by the way, too, so he's not available. If you guys came in late, I asked about Sleepless in Seattle, be like, Sophia, you missed the whole discussion. Have you seen Sleepless in Seattle and You've Got Mail? I am like, I've watched these 2 movies in the last 2 days and like obsessed with Meg Ryan. I'm sorry if we keep mentioning her in this class multiple times. I'm not sorry to mention her. I'm just sorry to you. You have to hear me talk about her all the time. She's horrible now.
Everyone in Hollywood, they age like.
Well, she'll have the 1990s always, I say. No one can take that away.
I have a question, if
Yeah.
I may,
Go
if
ahead.
you could spill truth on this.
Spill truth hard. Oil spill level.
Granted, somebody has to be first, but I'm wondering, South Carolina, what are the factors why were they the first to secede?
They just wanted to, literally. It's one of those things like no
Well,
one.
why not Tennessee? Why
They
not
weren't
Virginia?
as fanatical. South Carolina was the land of Southern fanaticism. People say the war was fought between South Carolina and Massachusetts. Massachusetts is the most like, not just pro-union, but the land of Garrison, the liberator, anti-slavery. All the puritanical keep the nation together, make it pure, women's voting, temperance, anti-slavery, that was like localized in Massachusetts. And all the kind of like radical Southernism, like states' rights, we're our own country, no one tells us what to do, down with the tyrants, that was all South Carolina. And South Carolina, the war you could argue started in 1838 too, 1828 with nullification and Calhoun and those guys who were South Carolinians. So there was no competition. Like Mississippi wasn't like, oh, we want to secede, but let's South Carolina go first to the United States. Like when like we'll allow like, age before beauty or whatever. Like we all want to do it, let that person go first. Like South Carolina was the only one that had either crazy enough or had the guts, however, to just do it. That was the only reason why. They were the most.
I did, while you were talking, I was looking for the population of South Carolina when you're talking about the delegates. And what I came across, it was about 700,000, it says, but 57% of them were slaves. And that was the highest percentage.
Yeah, Peter Wood
All the South.
Peter Wood wrote a book. Peter Wood wrote a book about.
In 1860.
Yeah, no, Peter Wood wrote a book. I think it's called Black Majority. Very, very good book. And he says South Carolina already, by 1740, had more African-born South Carolinians and slaves, both slave and free, than kind of like white Anglican, whatever. Like it was, yeah, already.
Not African born.
Well, of African stock, but some of them, like when you said like the slave trade is outlawed in 1808, I think.
Yeah.
So already in the 1700s, it's still going on. And South Carolina was a black majority state. It might have been the only one where actually there were more people of color than white people and nowhere else in the South do you see that.
How did that cease to be then? Because I'm assuming the birth rate is probably higher among blacks, and South Carolina does not currently have a black.
I don't know. Yeah,
So,
the demographic questions are so interesting to me.
is it just because somebody moved north?
There is, like, in terms of American history, the Great Migration of World War I era, when a lot of African Americans moved, especially from Mississippi to places like Chicago and Detroit. And yeah, like you're like, why is the old Rust Belt in terms of demographic numbers so heavily African American? A lot of the people were like sons and daughters of sharecroppers who moved north for these economic opportunities in the Great War, the wake of the Great War. So maybe I don't know. But okay, so that's maybe. South Carolina is exceptional in many ways, like a different mold even amongst other like Southern states. May 6th, 21st, Arkansas, Tennessee, North Carolina. There's your Confederacy. Confederacy has 11 states in order of secession: South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Texas, Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, North Carolina. 4 of the 11 secede after Lincoln is in office. The most important one, Virginia, only a month after he's been invested as president. The Confederacy though has 13 stars on its flag. Why? Well, I have this note over here because Missouri, MO, and Maryland were very pro-Southern in sympathy, never actually joined the South. Kentucky, this Confederacy could have easily had 14 states. They could have Kentucky, Missouri, and Maryland all could have joined the Confederacy. There was discussion and like a lot of sympathy there. They do not. But as like, oh, they're one of us. They have Confederate sympathies. Two stars on the Confederate flag denote just kind of like honorary status. There's only actually 11 Confederate states.
That's an interesting coincidence though with the original colonies, 2013.
And you know what? I guarantee you some guy somewhere in there, that's such a great comment. There's probably some guy somewhere who's like, yeah, we have 11. There's Southern states. Oh, wait, this would be like the colonies. This would be add more fuel to our argument. I've never thought of that. You said right now. I guarantee you that there was people that were on that wavelength of like, we'll be the new original 13 colonies, totally.
What about Delaware? Because Delaware was also a slave state, right?
I'm not sure. Delaware, I know even in modern Delaware, the southern coastal areas of Delaware have much more in common with kind of the, almost like Caribbean, but like the Atlantic Chesapeake Bay area. They're very southern.
Wow. Yeah.
But when you look at like already northern Delaware, you're almost in Philadelphia. It's very, so I think Delaware in some ways would, and I'm not trying to make fun of Delaware, I swear, but they're kind of irrelevant. They're so small. It's like, what did Rhode Island think at this time? Who cares? But Delaware, I'd say it's a very good, it's very good of you to bring that up because there's a lot of divisions within the states themselves. And actually, dude, triple golden star, perfect segue to our last point. As Delaware, you can imagine, depending whether it's inland or coastal, et cetera, there's going to be divided sympathies. Last thing we're going to finish on, June 1861, West Virginia, reverse question mark, West Virginia secedes northward. 11 states secede from the Union, 1 secedes from the Confederacy. The western part of Virginia becomes actually West Virginia. And John Denver broke it out right away, the banjo. Almost heaven. You don't want to sing it with me? I'll sing it. That's how you learn the.
If you sing, I'm gonna go over.
I just want to sing Country Roads. Anyone who knows Country Roads lyrics? Anybody? You don't have to sing it with me. If I admit he's gonna make it, I can't make you sing it. I can make anyone know it. Freaking amazing song. It's a good song. It's a good song. It's a freaking good song. Go for it. You know what's so funny? Okay, everyone, imagine a scale of 0 to 10, right? Everyone is somewhere a singer. Like someone's a 3 out of 10, some people are like very gifted with their voice. Everyone gets worse singing when they're nervous. It's the most obvious thing. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
just freaking sing like you're in your shower. Go for it. Freaking crush it. Like if you suck, like whatever. You suck at most things. Who cares?
I'm holding out for I'm gonna go over.
All right, fair enough.
The thing is, when you sing in the shower, it echoes throughout the house and everybody hears you. You just go feel that they're hearing you.
That's brilliant.
You think
Never
you're
thought.
quiet, but you're not. Hey, Gracjan,
What
I
up?
have another comment I'd like to.
By the way, the class is over, y'all. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Astons, you guys are like the first family of the Zoom chat. Thank you so much for joining us always. Dave Schmidt has a question. I won't sign off yet, but I just want to say like I'm reducing this just onto me because we're done with the information. Very successful class. In terms of when we get to next class and start with the first land battle, we're ready to go. Dave, question is.
So earlier when you were talking about Lincoln and his great strength, his diplomacy, et cetera, that made me think of this. I believe there's this belief that when Lincoln did issue the Emancipation Proclamation, 62. was that?
September 22nd, 1862, right after the Battle of Sharpsburg and Antietam.
So at that point, the North is not doing real well.
Not at all.
Right.
Horrible.
And sympathies may be leaning more and more to the South.
A lot of Southern sympathies, right?
Well, and with Europe, et cetera. And so the Emancipation Proclamation diplomatically was issued, some say, to make sure foreign countries do not side with the South. Because who could side with a country promoting slavery?
This is the perfect place to end the class because I hope everyone on the Zoom heard what Dave said. It was perfectly correct. The Emancipation Proclamation geopolitically is just Fort Sumter, the sequel. Lincoln does have some like sympathies towards African-American equality, et cetera. I don't want to make it seem like, oh, he was just a scumbag politician. But yeah, in addition to like, oh, this will cause problems in the South, maybe insurrections, he says exactly, hey, to his aid, someone, remember when we let the South fire first and they're the bad guys forever now? And that's what Europe's been telling us. Europe's been telling us they hate us, the Union, and they see in the South kind of like the revolutions of 1848, these freedom fighters, but they're total scumbags, the South, because they fired first. They're liars because they claim that they are not the aggressors. Obviously they are, and they fist bump each other. Lincoln's like, why don't I do that again? All of the South, all of it, conservative, liberal, they're all against slavery. Let's now make it where they can't decide with that question neutralized. They can't say, oh, it doesn't matter if we support the South or the North. They're both pro-slavery. It's irrelevant. Let's make our guys, our side about this crusade for new equality and freedom. Exactly. It's another brilliant diplomat. And that's exactly what happens. There are even like super, super right-wing people in Europe who are like, I love everything you guys are doing to the Southerners. Like, we hate the North. They're so gross. Like, all these,
they want their cotton, which they have.
yeah, and we'll talk about that too. Do not allow me to forget when we talk about the cotton crisis. of 1860. I'm going to give you a lot on Europe. I hope you appreciate it. It sounds so bad. Don't ever say I didn't do anything nice for you. I hope you like this president I'm going to give you. I'm going to talk a lot about the European aspect of the war. And that's one of the biggest things is like when the South threatens to turn off the faucet of cotton, 75 to 80% of worldwide support. How does Europe react? Excellent. Aston's, again, you are the best people. Thank you for joining us. I wish you a beautiful rest of your day. I'll see you all on Wednesday, and goodbye to everyone.